So with the Burning Crusade coming out on anniversary, it's time to start making some tier lists about the classes in the Burning Crusade. This video right here will be the best or the ultimate classic WoW TBC anniversary class tier list based on their performance in dungeons and raids. So think about this like a PvE tier list for the Burning Crusade. Now, this tier list will be based on logs from the Burning Crusade Classic back in 2021 and 2022, so we basically know which classes are going to be good in Phase 1, Phase 2, Phase 3, and all the way throughout the Burning Crusade, unless something new happens this time around that did not happen the first time, but we do have very strong indicators on which classes are going to be good, and which ones are going to be, let's just call them, less good as well. Before we get into the video itself, I just want to say that I do have a gold making guide for the Burning Crusade for anybody who wants to min-max their gold making and make a bunch more gold in the Burning Crusade on anniversary servers. Check it out. Through the link down below, you will find the absolute best gold farms and the best gold making techniques. You will also get access to a premium Discord server for gold making where you get early access to videos and exclusive videos. Even now, we already have 3 exclusive videos that you get access to when you buy the guide and join that server. Alternatively, if you don't have the Classic WoW Gold Making Guide yet, and you want to have both the Classic WoW one and the TBC one, you can buy them both through a bundle and get a massive discount. Getting either one of these 2 guides is a great way to support me as a content creator and get a lot more gold making knowledge back at the same time. So once again, check it out through the link down below, in the video description or the pinned comment. So with that being said, let's start making the tier list itself, and I have written down some key notes for every single class, but I'm not going to cover them in depth, because it's not really meant to teach you about the classes, it is just a fun video making a tier list. I will also say, don't base your class choice on a tier list. This is just a fun way to kind of rank the classes right now, and then see how accurate it was compared to when the expansion comes out. Either way, let me know if you have any different tier lists in the comments down below, like if yours looks different than mine, let me know in the comments down below. Either way, let's get started. So first off, in the S tier we have a couple of classes, and I'll start right off with the Beast Mastery Hunter, as Beast Mastery Hunters are really good in the Burning Crusade. So I'm just going to put those right up there. And Beast Mastery Hunters, they dominate single target DPS pretty much throughout every single phase, especially in Sunwell when with pet scaling and gear, and they provide ferocious inspiration, buff for party-wide damage, amplifier, stackable, and essential. Now, while we are in the S tier, there's a couple more classes that really deserves a spot here, and there's at least one class that deserves 2 spots here, and that is going to be the Warlock. For the Warlocks, there are 2 specs that I really want to put up here, and we then have Destruction Warlocks and also Demonology Warlocks. So they both, in my opinion, deserve a spot here. For Destruction Warlocks, I mean they're top tier range DPS throughout pretty much all of the Burning Crusade, and they're competing for top DPS spots in just about every single phase. Also, they scale really well with haste and crit in the later phases, and they have utility like curses and summons that just makes them really good. On the other hand, you have Demonology Warlocks, which is basically the same as Destruction Warlock, with more of a pet emphasis than Destruction Warlocks. You also have Arcane Mages. I mean, it's a World of Warcraft expansion, you cannot have one of those without mages being in the top. Mages are always good in just about every single expansion of WoW, at least the ones that comes to mind for me personally. Like, mages are at the top pretty much always, in some way, shape or form. In TBC, it's pretty much the same, but it's a way different spec. In Classic WoW, you played Frost, then went Fire. In TBC, Arcane Mages absolutely pump, so Arcane Mages has a really insane burst and a good sustain in the end game with mana management, and they also bring Arcane Intellect and Focus Magic for the Focus Caster groups. In my opinion, they peak later in the game, so like phase 3 to phase 5 is usually when you will see these do top DPS, or top DPS contenders. Next up then, starting in the A tier, we have Warriors, and for Warriors there's a couple of different specs, but first of all let's talk about Fury Warriors. I'm putting these into the high A tier. You can definitely make an argument for an S tier as well, but if you think about every single phase, I personally think it's an A-tier class. They do typically start the expansion kinda slow and start becoming really good in phase 3 onwards. So usually warriors are pretty good, and the same thing goes for Classic WoW. They start off kinda slow, but they do scale really well with the gear, and when they have their full best in slot, they absolutely pump. And also, think about warglaves in Black Temple. You probably will not get them, by the way, but hey, if you do, it's gonna be great. Next up we also have Combat Rogues, and in my opinion they deserve a spot right next to Fury Warriors, due to some of the main reasons, like the same reasons I mean. They scale better with gear, so the more gear you have, the better DPS you do, which I guess is the same thing for every single class, but Warriors and Rogues even more so. Also, they have the whole exposed armor debuff, which is quite valuable to have in TBC as well. Next up then, we are going back to a class we already have talked about, and that is going to be Hunters. So far we have talked about Beast Mastery Hunters, but we also have to talk about Survival Hunters. And I did struggle to find the icon here for a bit, but there we go, Survival Hunters. Survival Hunters, to me, they deserve an A-tier spot because they are also great, and they're really good for physical groups with exposed weakness debuff, and it's a solid DPS that improves in the later phases. Even though it's still going to be behind Beast Mastery for pure output, but once again you really want to have one of these for the Exposed Weakness debuff, or the Exposed Weakness, right, that's the name, Exposed Weakness. So you want to have one of them in the physical groups for pumping. Really good spec to have, and most groups tend to do like a bunch of Beast Mastery Hunters, or at least one of them, and you have one of these in the Pumper, or like the Pumper group for physical DPS. One more class that really should be all the way up in A tier is going to once again be one that we have talked about. It's going to be Fire Mage. Fire Mages are viable alternatives to Arcane, and especially in phase 5 with improved Scorch for fire comps, and is also good for AoE pretty much all the time, and for AoE specifically might even be better than Arcane, but that being said, there's not that many AoE fights, sadly. Next up, let's start speeding things up. So here we have Shamans, and I'm going to put Shamans into B tier, and to be fair, I'm going to do so for both Elemental and Enhancement. I do believe that I rank Enhancement slightly over Elemental, but they're both really close. So for Enhancement, it's a melee support king with Wind Fury Totem and Unleashed Rage. It has decent DPS, but it's more so brought for buffs. That being said, it's consistent across every single phase, and even is performing quite well as well in some phases. Elemental as well is more of a caster support with Totem of Wrath and Bloodlust, and is a ranged DPS that scales well but peaks mid-phase. One per raid seems to be ideal, and in my opinion, like, you tend to stack more Resto Shamans due to how good they are. So if you bring Shamans mainly for the buffing purposes, you tend to stack more Restorations than Elementals and Enhancements. Either way, they're two decent classes to bring, and how many you bring will depend on whether or not we have any changes to Bloodlust in TBC on Anniversary compared to TBC Classic. Because back in Classic, people used to put Shamans into groups and like swap them around all the time, in order to give Bloodlust to different people all the time. Either way, next up we have Arms Warrior, also going into B tier. So Arms Warrior, they bring Blood Frenzy. It's a debuff for physical damage applications. It has lower DPS than Fury, but usable in niche compositions, and once again improves really well with gear. Next up we have Retribution Paladin, also going into B tier. It's really close to both like Shamans and the Arms Warrior here. It's a decent DPS, but usually gets outperformed or outshined by a lot of other classes, but I think Ret Paladins peak about phase 5. So in phase 5, being a Ret Paladin can be a decent choice. And one more class, or DPS spec at least, that I'm going to put into B tier, even though I kinda wanna have it further down, but B tier is okay. Affliction of Warlocks, a damage over time focused spec for sustained fights, provides debuffs like Malediction, but also falls off in burst heavy phase 5 encounters, and typically you just want to spec Destruction anyway. I mean, so far you have two specs that perform way better than Affliction does, so Affliction is like the bad spec to go compared to the other two. Now, in the C tier for DPS classes, you will find a bunch of classes that will probably never be topping DPS meters, but they usually provide something different to the party. So first of all, we have Boomkin, for example. In C tier as well, they will once again not top any DPS meters, but they bring Moonkin Aura for spell crit and Fairy Fire hit buff. So once again, you bring them for the raid composition, and it's a buffing class. Feral Druid also will probably not be topping any DPS meters, but once again it's a pretty decent class to have and buffs the bleed effect. But also it's a pretty good off tank to have if you want to have somebody who can simply go tank at any point. Feral Druids are a good choice. And speaking of classes that buff people or like simply are helpful, Shadow Priests. Shadow Priest also goes into the C tier for me. They have Shadow Weaving and Mystery for spell damage, Vampiric Touch for mana regen. This one is really good, by the way. Like, Vampiric Touch is really what they're brought for. And also, I'm just gonna say, Shadow Priests are way better now than they were in vanilla. Like, in vanilla, it was a meme spec, nobody played it, but now you can play it, and even though you're ranked here, believe me, people want to have you in their raids. It is just, once again, you are not topping DPS meters, but you are a valuable part of the team. And the last spec that I want to put into C tier for DPS specifically is going to be Marksmanship Hunter, all the way down here, because once again, you're usually brought for the buffs you have, in this case True Shot Aura, for physical hit. Other than that, you have two Hunter specs that are way better than this one, so if you're looking to be topping DPS meters, well, just play one of the other two, so you have 2 out of 3 solid options. But once again, this one has a niche place if you need that aura. Then we also have 3 classes that I'm just going to put into the D tier, because these are classes or specs that I simply would not bring to raids, and I find them more to be PvP focused. And at this point, you know which ones I'm talking about, but anyway, we have Assassination Rogue, we have Frost Mage, and we have Subtlety Rogues as well. So all of these ones I'm just going to put all the way down into D tier. It's basically the don't bring this class tier, or the meme tier, or basically PvP specs. So at this point we have done all the DPS classes, so let me know what you think so far. Now it's time to talk about the healers and the tanks. So let's start off with the healers. For me, Restoration Shamans has to be an S tier. Number 1, people bring them for the buffs, but also their god tier throughput with Chain Heal for group damage. They also bring stuff like Bloodlust, Heroism, and a bunch of totems. It is one of the best, if not actually the best healer in the Burning Crusade. Then we also have Holy Paladins, which to me deserves a spot. I'm just going to use this icon right here. So Holy Paladins, they're going to be A tier. And don't worry about the placement here, like where in the A tier they are. I'm just ranking healers after DPS. So Holy Paladins are really good, once again. Excellent single target spam heals for tanks, just like in Classic WoW. Then we also have Holy Priests, ranking those quite high as well, right next to Holy Paladins. They are more versatile with Circle of Healing for AoE, and strong healings over times and the shields. Then we also have Restoration Druids, who usually brought more for raid healing, and to me this one is also a strong A pick. The thing is, you kind of want to have a mix of everything, right? You want to have some Holy Paladins to heal the tanks, you want to have some Resto Shamans, and you might want to have a Resto Druid as well. Instead of, like, if you see Resto Shamans being top, you're not only going to have Resto Shamans, you will have something else as well. And then that brings me to Discipline Priest. They are going to be the lowest ranking healer, just because everything else is better, and shield, this one is more shield focused for burst mitigation, but it's lacking that heal. Instead of healing damage, you're preventing damage from being taken, which can be really good, by the way, in certain scenarios, but typically the regular heals are more valued. So now we have covered both DPS and healing, it's time to talk about tanking, and I'm just gonna say I've never tanked in TBC, but I have been chatting to a couple of friends to see like what they think about tanking. So, for tanks, I'm going to put Protection Warriors into the S tier, and what these people told me is that Protection Warriors are the complete package. They have some of the best mitigation, health pooling, and cooldowns like Shield Wall. They can handle magic and AoE quite well, and they're dominant from phase 1 until phase 5. So Prot Warriors seems to be the best choice all around. That being said, the other 2 choices you have also are good in certain scenarios. So for example, Prot Paladins are going to be really good as well, but it's going to be more niche. That being said, it's going to be A tier, so all the way down here, and basically, it's the AoE threat king for ad heavy fights, and it's a great off tank, and also brings blessings. If you don't have enough Holy Paladins, or if you don't have any Ret Paladins, having a Prot Paladin to fill the role of blessings could be great. So if you have 2 tanks, for example, you can have a Warrior main tank and a Paladin off tank, and because there is no actual feral thing for tanking here, I'm just gonna put this one, and imagine this being feral. I'm too lazy to put one in, okay? But imagine this being feral. The Paladin slash Soulfire thing. Imagine that being feral right now, so I don't have to like move the feral icon. That is also going to be A tier, and feral tanks scales into a mitigation beast in phase 5. They have top single target threat, but also a spiky damage intake with no blocking and also no crushing blow protection, or at least low protection for crushing blows. So yeah, like tanks, once again, I personally would go for a Warrior main tank and a Paladin off tank, but having a Druid that can also be off tank is also great, because they can do both DPS and off tanking in roughly the same gear. Meanwhile, a Paladin kinda wants to have different gear pieces. So there you have it, my complete tier list for classes and specs in the Burning Crusade Classic on Anniversary servers. Once again, let me know if I made any mistakes here in your opinion, and let me know what your tier list would look like in the comments down below. I don't claim to have all the facts here, but I have been doing quite a bit of researching, and I have played TBC quite a lot as well. Either way, once again, let me know your thoughts in the comments, and while you're down there, please consider dropping a like and subscribe to the channel for more TBC content. As always, thank you for watching, and I'll see you again in the next video very soon.